The sun had barely risen over Blackthorn territory when the entire pack gathered in the stone courtyard. Word had spread fast that morning. The Alpha King was going to speak, and everyone knew what that meant. A mate rejection was rare, and rarer still when it happened in public. Lyra Sinclair stood in the center of the courtyard, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She wore a plain gray dress, the kind an Omega was expected to wear, nothing that would draw attention. Her dark hair was pulled back, and her eyes stayed fixed on the ground. She had known this day might come. She had felt it in the way Draven looked past her, instead of at her, in the way he canceled their meetings, in the cold silence that had grown between them since the bond first formed 3 months ago. Alpha King Draven Ashwood stood a few feet away, tall and broad-shouldered, his jaw set in a hard line. He was the kind of man people feared before they even met him. His eyes were sharp, his voice carried authority without effort, and his presence alone could silence a room. He looked at Lyra now, not with warmth, but with the cold calculation of a man protecting his throne. "I reject you as my mate," he said. His voice rang clear across the courtyard, loud enough for every wolf present to hear. "You are not fit to stand beside a king." The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. She felt the bond between them snap, a sharp and sudden pain that started in her chest and spread through her entire body. She gasped and pressed a hand over her heart, stumbling but refusing to fall. Around her, the pack members watched. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others whispered behind their hands, already gossiping about what this meant for her future. Draven did not wait for her to recover. He turned and walked back toward the pack house, his guards falling into step behind him. He did not look back once. In his mind, he had done what needed to be done. An Omega, with no strength, no title, and no real family connections, could never help him hold his throne. He had convinced himself this was about protecting the pack, about making the hard choices a king had to make. He told himself the pain in his chest was nothing more than the natural discomfort of breaking a bond, something that would fade with time. He was wrong about almost everything. Lyra stood alone in the courtyard long after the others had drifted away. The pain in her chest slowly settled into something duller, an ache that would stay with her for a long time. She had spent 3 years in the Blackthorn pack, keeping her head down, working in the kitchens, speaking only when spoken to, hiding a truth she had carried since childhood. Today, that truth no longer needed to stay hidden. Lyra was not simply an Omega with no family. She was the last living heir of the Nightfall bloodline, a line of wolves once known for their rare gifts and fierce loyalty to one another. Generations ago, the Ashwood pack had hunted the Nightfall line nearly to extinction, fearing their growing influence and power. Lyra's grandmother had fled with her infant daughter, changing their names, moving from territory to territory, until finally settling quietly within Blackthorn land itself, hidden in plain sight. Lyra had grown up knowing her family's history, warned again and again never to reveal it, especially not to an Ashwood. She understood now that fate had a strange sense of humor. She had been mated to the one man whose family had tried to destroy hers, and he had just thrown her away without ever knowing what she truly was. Lyra returned to the small room she had lived in for years and packed the few things she owned. A worn photograph of her mother, a silver ring passed down through her family, a change of clothes. She did not cry as she packed. The tears had already come and gone in the courtyard. What remained now was something steadier, something that felt almost like relief. She was done hiding. By late morning, she had left Blackthorn territory behind, walking the long road that led toward the border of Ironfang land. She knew the risk. The Ironfang pack was led by Cale Voss, a man known throughout the territories as ruthless, calculating, and utterly without mercy toward his enemies. He was also Draven's oldest rival, the one alpha that the Ashwood King feared above all others. Their two packs had clashed for years over land, resources, and old grudges that went back generations. Lyra had crossed paths with Cale only once before, during a border dispute meeting where she had been sent to deliver documents on behalf of the Blackthorn kitchen staff. He had barely looked at her that day. She doubted he remembered her at all, but she remembered him. She remembered the way his eyes had studied everyone in the room, missing nothing, and the quiet intensity that seemed to surround him even when he said very little. When she reached the gates of Ironfang territory, The guards stopped her immediately, weapons raised. She held up her hands, showing she carried nothing dangerous. "I need to speak with Alpha Voss," she said, keeping her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Tell him it concerns the Nightfall bloodline." The guards exchanged a glance. One of them disappeared inside, while the other kept his eyes fixed on her, wary and unmoving. Lyra waited, her legs aching from the long walk, her chest still sore from the broken bond. She did not know if Cale would even agree to see her. She only knew she had nowhere else to go, and something inside her insisted this was the right path. 10 minutes later, she was led into the main hall of the Iron Fang pack house. It was darker than Blackthorn's courtyard, built from heavy stone, and lit by torches instead of open sky. Cale Voss sat at the head of a long table, and when Lyra entered, he stood slowly, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. "You said this concerns the Nightfall line," he said, his voice low and even. "Explain." Lyra took a breath and told him everything. She spoke of her grandmother's escape, her mother's hidden life, and her own years of silence within Blackthorn territory. She spoke of the mark on her wrist, a small crescent shape passed down through every generation of Nightfall women, and showed it to him without hesitation. She spoke of the rejection that morning, the broken bond, and the freedom that had followed it. Cale listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, silence stretched between them for a long moment. "Draven rejected a Nightfall heir," he finally said, something close to disbelief in his voice. He had no idea what he was giving up. "He saw an Omega with no name and no power," Lyra said. "He wasn't wrong about how I appeared. He was wrong about everything underneath." Cale studied her again, and this time his gaze held something different, not suspicion, but genuine interest. Most people who had been publicly rejected by an Alpha King would have been broken by the humiliation, would have hidden away in shame. Lyra stood in front of him with her chin raised, her voice steady, her eyes clear. She had walked directly into enemy territory, rather than beg for scraps of mercy from a pack that no longer wanted her. "You could use this information for your own protection," Cale said slowly. "Sell it to another pack, disappear, and start a new life somewhere far from here. Why come to me?" "Because you're the only one with enough strength to make this matter," Lyra said. "My bloodline gives legitimate claim to lands the Ashwood pack has held for generations. Alone, that claim means nothing. I have no army, no resources, no pack behind me. But paired with Iron Fang's strength, it becomes something Draven cannot ignore." Cale's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile, but held a similar sharpness. He respected calculation. He respected wolves who understood the true weight of power and how to use it. Most of all, he respected honesty, and Lyra had given him nothing but that since the moment she walked through his gates. "You're offering me an alliance," he said. "I'm offering both of us an opportunity," Lyra corrected. "You gain a legitimate claim against Ashwood territory. I gain protection, a pack, and the chance to finally stop hiding who I am. Neither of us has to pretend this is anything other than what it is." For the rest of the afternoon, they talked. Cale asked question after question, testing her knowledge of pack law, testing her understanding of territory boundaries, testing whether her claim to the Nightfall name could withstand scrutiny from pack elders and neighboring alphas. Lyra answered every question without hesitation, drawing on years of quiet study, years of preparing for a day she had once hoped would never come. By evening, Cale had made his decision. He called together his most trusted advisors and explained the situation. Some were skeptical at first, questioning whether an Omega raised in secrecy could truly hold the weight of the Nightfall name. But as Lyra spoke to them directly, answering their doubts with calm confidence, their skepticism slowly gave way to something closer to respect. Cale watched her handle the room with quiet satisfaction. He had built his pack on strength and results, not on empty titles or inherited privilege. Lyra had walked into a den of wolves who had every reason to doubt her, and she had won them over through sheer will and clear thinking. It was, he realized, exactly the kind of partner his pack needed. As night fell, preparations began for a bonding ceremony. It would not be a fated bond, not the kind that formed naturally between destined mates. This would be a chosen bond, formed through mutual respect and shared purpose, a ceremony rarely used in modern pack tradition, but never forgotten. Both Cale and Lyra understood what they were choosing. This bond would tie her officially to the Iron Fang pack, giving legal and spiritual weight to their alliance, uniting her claim with his strength. Lyra stood beneath the moonlight in a set of black and silver clothing provided by the Iron Fang pack, replacing the plain gray dress she had worn that morning. The transformation felt symbolic in more ways than one. She was no longer the quiet Omega hiding in Blackthorn's kitchens. She was standing as herself, fully and completely, for the first time in years. As the ceremony began, Kale took her hand, and the pack elders spoke the old words that bound two wolves together, not through fate, but through choice. Lyra felt something settle inside her chest, different from the broken ache left by Draven's rejection. This felt steady. This felt like something she had chosen with clear eyes, not something forced upon her by circumstances beyond her control. When the ceremony ended, the mark of the Iron Fang pack appeared on her skin, a symbol of silver flame just below her collarbone. She touched it gently, feeling the weight of everything that had happened in a single day, rejected at dawn, reborn by midnight. Word of the alliance spread through the territories within hours, carried by messengers and confirmed by pack scouts stationed near the border. By the time the sun rose again, every pack in the region knew that the Omega Alpha King Draven Ashwood had rejected that morning, now stood beside his greatest rival, bonded not by fate, but by her own choice, wearing the mark of a bloodline the Ashwood pack had once tried to erase. When Draven finally received the news, he sat in stunned silence for a long moment. He remembered her standing in the courtyard, remembered dismissing her as weak, as unworthy, as nothing more than an obstacle to his rule. He had believed he was protecting his throne by casting her aside. Instead, he had handed his kingdom's greatest threat directly into the hands of his oldest enemy. He thought of the mark on her wrist he had never bothered to ask about. He thought of the calm way she had accepted his rejection, without argument, without pleading, and he realized now that her silence had not been weakness. It had been patience. She had known exactly who she was, long before he ever tried to define her as nothing. That night, as the moon rose high over Iron Fang territory, Lyra stood on the stone balcony of her new home, looking out toward the distant hills that marked the border of Blackthorn land. The pain of the broken bond still lingered somewhere beneath the surface, a quiet reminder of the morning that had changed everything. But standing there, with the Iron Fang mark glowing faintly silver against her skin, and Kale's presence steady beside her, she felt something she had not felt in years. She felt like herself. For the first time in her life, Lyra was not hiding, not shrinking, not waiting for someone else to decide her worth. She had walked away from rejection and built something new with her own hands, her own choices, her own strength. Whatever came next, whatever battles or alliances or challenges the future held, she would face them standing tall, no longer invisible, no longer alone. The Alpha King had rejected her at dawn, believing he was securing his throne. By midnight, she had proven exactly how wrong he was.